There are over 4,000 colleges in this country. You've probably heard of about 40. You've probably heard of about 40. The right college for you is statistically very unlikely to be one of those 40. The school that fits your 4 dimensions, academic, social, emotional, and financial, is almost certainly one you haven't seriously considered yet. Might even be one you've never even heard of. This week we widen the map, not to overwhelm you, to free you. Hi, I'm Dr. Heather Case. Welcome to week 9 of From Stressed Out to Stand Out. Last week we talked about fit, what you actually need across those 4 dimensions. This week we're going to look at the landscape of where those needs can be met. Some of these options will be familiar. Many won't be. That's the whole point. Today, we're going to discuss the 7 types of colleges that most families don't talk about. Most students choose from the 40 schools, but 4,000 exist. Here's the broad map. I'm going to move through the categories quickly so you have the full picture. We'll circle back to what a few students most often miss. Public universities, state-funded, usually larger, and serving a huge range of students. In-state tuition is significantly lower than almost any private school. Most flagship state universities are highly respected academically and have strong alumni networks in their regions. If you live in a state with a strong flagship like Michigan, University of North Carolina, University of Texas Austin, UCLA, UVA, that school deserves real consideration. Private universities, higher sticker price, but financial aid can make them less expensive than the public option, sometimes dramatically so. We'll explore exactly how in week 11. Don't rule out a private school because the number on their website looks impossible. Liberal arts colleges, smaller, undergraduate focused, and built around teaching. Most have under 3,000 students total. If you learn best in smaller classes with close access to faculty, this category exists specifically for you. Many of the strongest outcomes in medicine, law, academia, and the arts come from schools most people have never heard of. Research universities. Larger, with faculty split between teaching and research. More resources, more options, and often more graduate students than undergraduate. This experience is different from a liberal arts college. It requires more independence, less hand-holding, more access to cutting-edge research if you seek it out. Community colleges, 2-year institutions with dramatically lower costs. In many states, formal transfer agreements guarantee admission to a 4-year state university if you complete specific coursework and maintain a specific GPA. You graduate with the same diploma as someone who started at the 4-year school. More information on this in a moment. Special mission schools, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, women's colleges, religiously affiliated schools. Each exists because a specific community or value is at its center. If that community or value matters to you, these schools deserve to be on your list as first choices, not as alternatives. Online and hybrid programs, more established now than they were even 5 years ago. Some are excellent, accredited, and legitimately compared to their in-person counterparts. Accreditation really matters here, so look for regional accreditation. Support services matter too. Evaluate them the same way you'd evaluate any school. That's the full map. But let's take a few minutes to focus on 3 categories students most consistently underestimate. 3 categories that deserve more attention than they get. Community college transfer pathways. In California, Texas, Florida, Virginia, and many other states, there are formal agreements, sometimes called TAG programs or transfer guarantees, that guarantee admission to a specific state university if you complete a defined set of courses at a community college with a defined minimum GPA. You do not end up with a lesser diploma. You graduate from the same university with the same degree at a fraction of the cost. The first 2 years of most bachelor's programs are identical wherever you take them. They're general education requirements, the introductory courses. Doing those at a community college and the upper division work at a 4-year school is not a consolation plan. It is a financially strategic one for many students. HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions, schools like Howard, Spelman, Morehouse, Florida A&M, Florida International, the University of Texas at El Paso, and dozens of California state campuses were built specifically to serve students from communities that were historically excluded from higher education. They have culturally rooted environments, alumni networks that simply don't exist at predominantly white institutions, and academic programs that are in many fields nationally ranked. These are first choice schools for many of the strongest students in the country. If your community or your values align, they belong on your list as genuine options, not safety valves. Small liberal arts colleges most families haven't heard of. Schools like Kalamazoo, Earlham, Beloit, Knox, Reed, Whitman, and dozens of others offer stronger per-student teaching, smaller classes, and more personalized advising, and often more generous financial aid packages than the name schools that families most often default to. Their graduates go on to prestigious graduate programs, professional programs, meaningful careers, and lives they chose, not lives they fell into. The trade-off is that you'll spend some time explaining the school to relatives. In many cases, that's a fair trade. Let me tell you about a student I'll call Carlos. Carlos is Salvadoran American and the first in his family to go to college. His parents had supported the idea of college since he was young, but the mechanics of how it actually worked, what a major was, what financial aid was, how it was calculated, what the difference was between a community college and a state university, those weren't things his family had any way to know from experience. Carlos had been working toward a 4-year university, like everyone at his school assumed he would. But when his family sat down and looked honestly at what it was going to cost, even after financial aid, the loans on the table scared all 3 of them. Not a little, a lot. So we looked at his state's transfer agreement. 2 years at his local community college, a 3.2 minimum GPA, a specific set of transferable courses called IGETC, Intersegmental General Education Transfer Curriculum. It's a mouthful, I know. If he completed those, hit the GPA, he had guaranteed admission to the UC system. So Carlos did the work. He transferred after 2 years with a 3.8 GPA, no loans, a part-time job he'd been able to hold because his commute was reasonable, and a clearer major than the 17-year-old version of him had going into the community college. He graduated from the same University of California campus he'd been hoping to attend straight out of high school. And he saved himself and his family about $80,000. He got the exact same diploma. The reader at his transfer admission wrote that his application was one of the strongest in the pool because the 2 years at community college had given him a perspective, a focus, and a maturity that a student who went straight to a 4-year school at 17 or 18 often doesn't have yet. Carlos didn't take a lesser path. He took a smarter one that fit him better. There are 3 things I want you to do this week. 1, build a list of 15 colleges you'd consider, not just the ones you've already heard of. Use the Department of Education scorecard. Niche your school counselor's database, or use the Stressed Out to Stand Out list builder, which is focused on fit. You'll find the link in the comments. On your list, Be sure to include at least 2 schools from a category you've never seriously considered. Maybe it's an HBCU or an HSI, at least one small liberal arts college that you found through research rather than name recognition. And if it applies to your state and your situation, take a look at your community colleges and figure out what the transfer pathway is. 2, for 5 of those 15, write one sentence about what makes each of them distinct from the others. What's actually different? If you can't answer that question with specifics, you don't know enough about the school yet. That's a signal to do 10 more minutes of research. 3, notice your reactions. Where did your brain say, that doesn't count, or my family won't understand that choice? Those reactions are telling you something, not about the schools, but about what you've been taught to value. Not bad or good, just listen. We'll come back to that when we build your final list. One last thing, the right school for you is rarely the most famous one in the room. Famous doesn't mean better. Famous usually means a longer history of having money to spend on marketing, facilities, and football, all of which affect name recognition and almost none of which affect whether you'll thrive there. Look for the school that fits your 4 dimensions. Read the student newspaper to find out what students are actually experiencing, not just what the admissions brochure says they're experiencing. Look at the retention rate. What percentage of freshmen come back for sophomore year? Look at outcomes. Where do graduates actually end up? Then you have some information to begin to formulate a decision. The schools your relatives haven't heard of are not lesser. They're just less marketed. And you deserve to choose from the full 4,000, not just 40. Next week, in week 10, we tackle one of the highest anxiety questions in admissions right now: whether to submit your test scores. There's a clear school-by-school framework for making that decision, and almost nobody teaches it. But I will. Subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Before you go, I want to remind you of something very important. You are so much more than your application. Your worth is not measured by acceptance letters or rejection emails. I want you to know that your story matters. Tell it honestly, tell it bravely, and know that I am always here cheering you on. I'll see you next week.